My name is Julia. I lost custody of my daughter because of a betrayal so deep. It didn't just break my heart. It shattered my faith in the people I trusted most. My ex-husband and my own father worked together to take her from me. But they forgot one thing: I don't give up. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments. And if you're a mom or someone who's ever had to fight for someone you love, this story might hit close to home. Now let's go back to the night everything changed. You know those moments when everything feels almost perfect. That was me, standing in a sun-drenched backyard in suburban Connecticut, holding a chilled glass of sparkling rosé, pretending, for once, that life was calm. I wore my favorite sage green dress, the one my daughter picked out for Mother's Day, and for the first time in weeks, I actually let myself breathe. The garden was draped in soft white lanterns. String lights blinked gently above our heads. I could smell lemon cake and peonies. Somewhere behind me, my best friend Elise was laughing about something her twins did with a garden hose. People were smiling, chatting, the kind of warm, suburban cheer that makes you think nothing bad can happen here. And then I saw him, Derek, my ex-husband, with his sleeves rolled up and that smug, easy smile he always saves for strangers he wants to impress. He was leaning too close to a woman in a silk top, her lipstick the same shade I used to wear when we were married. They were laughing, his hand on the small of her back, and suddenly the glass in my hand didn't feel so cool anymore. I didn't even know he'd been invited. He caught my eye like he felt it and gave me a nod, half smug, half daring. As if to say, "Still watching me, huh?" I turned away. And that's when I heard the running. "Mom, Mom." My daughter Emma came barreling toward me across the grass in pink sneakers and tangled curls. Her little hands clutched my dress, her eyes wide and wet. "We have to go, right now." What's wrong?" I knelt, brushing hair from her flushed cheeks. "What happened?" She shook her head, panic written all over her face. "Please, can we just leave? I don't want to be here. I can't tell you now." "Elise," I called over my shoulder, my voice tight. "Can you grab my purse?" The cheerful background chatter kept buzzing as I gathered Emma in my arms, her breath hitching like she'd been running or hiding. I felt my stomach turn. As I opened the garden gate and walked us to the car, I noticed Derek watching us from across the lawn, still smiling, still smug. I should have asked more questions then. I should have demanded answers. But a mother knows when to run first and ask later. The ride home was quiet, at least outside the car. Inside, my thoughts were howling. Emma sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed tight, her gaze locked on the window. She hadn't said a word since we left the party. Not even when I handed her a bottle of water, which she took with a shaking hand but didn't drink. I watched the suburban landscape roll by, well-manicured lawns, picket fences, cheerful pumpkins still sitting on porches even though Halloween had passed. Everything looked normal, safe. But inside this car, our world was unraveling. I kept glancing over. Her jaw was clenched, the way mine used to be when I was 12 and pretending nothing hurt. I recognized the look. It was the face of a child trying to protect their mother. I reached across the center console and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "You're safe now, okay? Whatever it is, I'm here, always." She blinked. Once, twice. Then she whispered, "I heard them." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Heard who?" "Dad and Grandpa, in the study at Grandpa's house." I was supposed to be in the den watching a movie, but I wanted more ice cream. And I heard them talking, about me, about you. I pulled the car over. My chest was too tight to keep driving. "Emma, what did they say?" She turned toward me, and I'll never forget the look in her eyes, this awful mix of fear, confusion, and something deeper. Betrayal, not the kind a child should ever have to feel. "Dad said they had a plan, that they're going to take me. He said he made a deal with Grandpa to get full custody, that you'd fold when the pressure started. He said you'd be too unstable to fight." My mouth went dry. "And Grandpa said something awful, Mom. He said it was for the best, that I'd be better off with Dad anyway, that you should have never been a mother in the first place." I couldn't breathe. "Then Dad laughed," she whispered, voice cracking. "He laughed like it was all a game." The tears came hot and sudden. I reached for her, pulled her into my arms, and for a moment neither of us spoke. We just cried, her tiny frame shaking in sync with mine. I had thought the worst part of my divorce from Derek was over. That even though things had ended ugly, after his affair, after the custody mediation, I'd carved out a quiet, stable life for Emma. But I was wrong. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I drove the rest of the way home with Emma holding my hand. I didn't say a word, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I couldn't trust my voice not to crack into pieces. They were plotting behind my back. Derek, and my own father. That was the part I couldn't wrap my mind around. Martin Caldwell, my father, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike and kissed my scraped knees, was helping Derek take my daughter away from me. What kind of father does that to his daughter? What kind of grandfather does that to his granddaughter? By the time we pulled into the driveway, dusk had swallowed the sky. I walked Emma upstairs, tucked her into bed with her favorite fox blanket, and promised her again, "I'm not going anywhere." She clung to me for a moment before whispering, "Don't let them win." And I won't, even if I have to burn every bridge they built. The rain started after midnight, quiet at first, then harder, as if the sky couldn't hold back anymore, just like me. I stood in the bathroom, staring at my own reflection, barely blinking. The bathroom lights cast an unforgiving glare. My skin looked pale. The bags under my eyes were deeper than usual, like grief had been unpacking its luggage in my face for years. The soft hum of the exhaust fan buzzed overhead, but it couldn't drown out the thoughts, sharp, jagged thoughts that cut every time they came around. How long had this plan been in motion? How many dinners had I shared with my father, smiling across the table, while he secretly plotted to hand my child over to my ex? I locked the door behind me and sat down on the edge of the tub. Rain lashed the glass in bursts. I welcomed the noise. It matched the chaos in my chest. I thought about the last conversation I had with Martin, the kind of distant, obligatory exchange we'd perfected since the divorce. He'd patted Emma's head, smiled at her like he was doing her a favor just by showing up. Then he'd told me I looked tired. "You could really use some help, Jules," he'd said. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I was used to his passive judgments, the quiet criticisms dressed up as concern. But now those words rang differently. Was that the opening move? Was that when he started to see me not as a daughter or even a mother, but as a liability? I curled forward, pressing my forehead to my knees. My arms wrapped tightly around my legs, like if I squeezed hard enough I could hold myself together. But the truth was, I was unraveling. Images flashed across my mind, Derek's smirk when I first confronted him about the affair, the hotel receipts, the text messages from B. How he'd told me, "You're just too intense, Julia. Everything's always so heavy with you." As if being emotionally available made me the villain. He spun the divorce like a charm bracelet, wearing each lie like a gift. Told the court I was unstable because I'd cried in therapy, because I'd needed antidepressants for 6 months after my miscarriage. He knew exactly which words to use to get what he wanted. And now, he had Martin backing him. My own father. I stood up and turned the sink on. Splashing cold water over my face didn't help much. The sting was nothing compared to what was burning inside. The betrayal didn't come with fireworks or shouting matches. It came with whispers behind closed doors. It came with signatures on paper and conversations I wasn't meant to hear. It came with a little girl's trembling voice saying, "He said I'd live with Dad forever." That broke something in me. Emma was all I had left. When the house went, when the friends disappeared one by one, when the court made me split holidays and birthdays, she was my anchor. The only thing that kept me from drifting too far into the quiet. And they wanted to take even that. No, no. I reached for a towel, gripped it like it was a rope. I needed something solid, something to keep me from sinking. I thought of Emma curled in my bed down the hall. The way her tiny hand had found mine in the car. The way she looked at me tonight, scared, yes, but trusting. She still believed I could fix this. She didn't know how broken I felt, and I wouldn't let her see it. Not again. That whisper came back, stronger now. Not again. Not after I rebuilt our lives with duct tape and determination. Not after I went back to school part-time. Not after I cleaned office buildings after midnight just to afford her piano lessons and the pink sneakers she wore to that party. They didn't see those things. They only saw what they wanted to take, but I knew what I had. I had the truth. I had her. And I had a fire in my chest that had just been lit by the rain. Let them come. I would not fold. The air was still when I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. That perfect New England quiet, all polished hedges and brick columns, where even betrayal wears a crisp shirt and smiles politely. Emma was at school and I needed answers. No more wondering. No more maybe I misunderstood. Today I wanted my father to look me in the eye and lie to my face. Martin opened the door himself. No assistant. No perfunctory phone call to tell me he was busy. Just a mildly surprised lift of his eyebrows when he saw me. "Julia," he said, stepping aside. "You look tired." And there it was, his signature opening move. A concern laced with condescension. I stepped inside, brushing past him. "We need to talk." He gestured toward the kitchen with that same detached warmth he used on business clients and distant cousins. The kitchen was spotless, of course. White marble, navy cabinets, the smell of fresh basil lingering in the air. My mother used to keep candles lit. Now it felt like a showroom, everything curated, soulless. Martin sat across from me at the island, sliding a glass of water toward me like he was hosting an intervention. "What's on your mind?" I didn't play nice. "Emma overheard you and Derek. She knows, and now I know." He didn't blink, just tilted his head slightly. "Knows what?" "That you're helping him take her from me," I said, slowly, clearly. "That you're working with my ex-husband to steal my daughter." He exhaled through his nose and leaned back in the chair, folding his hands like a professor about to correct a student. "I wouldn't use words like steal, Julia." "Of course you wouldn't," I snapped. "Because you've rewritten every betrayal in your life as a kindness. So let's drop the euphemisms, Dad. Tell me why. Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and walked over to the sink, rinsed a coffee mug that didn't need rinsing. I watched his back, the same back that used to carry me piggyback through the apple orchard, the same shoulders that once blocked my high school boyfriend from getting too close. I didn't recognize it anymore. When he turned, his expression was cool, almost bored. "Because she needs stability, you've been struggling." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "That's the line. You think I'm unstable. You lost your job. I'm freelancing. You're behind on rent. By 1 week, I had the flu. You have no partner, no backup plan." "But I have her," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I've always had her. I raised her. I fed her, held her through nightmares, showed up to every teacher conference while Derek sent flowers and excuses." He didn't flinch. That was the worst part. "Julia, you're exhausted. This arrangement would give you freedom." There it was, freedom. As if my child was a weight, a project, a pawn. "She's not a burden," I said, standing. "She's not your chess piece to move around. And if you think I'll roll over because Derek makes more money and you like the way he dresses, you've miscalculated." "You're being emotional," he said. "No, I'm being a mother," I snapped. A long silence settled between us like dust. "I won't let you erase me," I said finally. "Not without a fight." As I left, I could feel his gaze on my back. The kitchen had turned into a courtroom, but for the first time in years. I walked out of that house with my spine straight. Let them underestimate me. That's their first mistake. It came on a Tuesday. A plain white envelope tucked between junk mail and a coupon for half-off dry cleaning. No special delivery, no warning. Just a quiet weapon sitting on my doormat like it had every right to be there. Emma was upstairs working on a school project, oblivious. I brought the envelope inside with shaking hands and stared at my name printed in neat, legal typeface. Julia Caldwell. No warmth, no mother, no context, just a summons. I opened it slowly as if delaying the pain would somehow make it less real. Inside was a court date. Derek had filed for full custody. I sat down on the floor right there in the hallway, surrounded by unopened bills, empty coffee cups, and school permission slips, and read every line. They had built their case already, citing emotional instability, financial insecurity, unreliable employment. All the phrases designed to make a woman sound dangerous without actually saying the words. They called me unpredictable. They said I was erratic with communication, that I lacked a proper support system. I wanted to scream, to cry, but all I could do was read it again, and then again. Each sentence felt like a slap, and the deeper I read, the more familiar it all felt. They weren't describing me. Not really. They were describing a version of me that had been carefully curated by someone who once knew how to twist my weaknesses into weapons. Derek. And now I could see Martin's fingerprints too, his business-style phrasing, the clean detachment. This was their version of a custody petition. I reached for my phone and dialed the first lawyer I'd worked with during the divorce. Straight to voicemail. The next one picked up but said she was fully booked for the next 3 months. The third gave a gentle but firm, "I'm sorry. It's just not a case I can take right now." One after another. Doors closed. Some said it kindly. Some sounded scared to get involved. And that's when it hit me. Derek had gotten to them. I sat there in the middle of my hallway as the afternoon sun crept through the blinds and warmed the unopened court documents. It wasn't just me against Derek. It was me against a system that had already started believing him. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, I made tea and pulled every document I had into a pile: school records, daycare sign-in sheets, pediatrician notes, receipts, emails. My living room turned into a war room. I dug through old boxes looking for her birth certificate, vaccination history, proof of residency, anything that said this child belongs with me. My laptop buzzed with tabs of legal advice, custody forums, support groups. But none of it felt real. It still felt like a bad dream. A week ago, I'd been sipping rosé under garden lights. Now I was mapping my every waking hour to prove I deserved to raise my own daughter. At 2:12 a.m., I sat on the floor with a yellow highlighter in one hand and a granola bar in the other, my back aching and my brain fried, when I realized they were counting on this. They were counting on me being too tired, too overwhelmed, too isolated to fight back. But they forgot something. I'd already done the impossible once. I survived the divorce. I rebuilt from scratch. I kept Emma fed, loved, safe. And now I had something they didn't expect. Rage, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the slow-burning, focused kind. The kind that whispers, "Try me." I took a deep breath and reached for another name in my contacts list. I wasn't done yet. The hallway outside family court was too quiet, too sterile. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, it's watchful. I sat on the edge of a molded plastic bench, knees bouncing, a folder of highlighted documents balanced on my lap. My dress itched, my shoes pinched, and I'd barely slept more than 3 hours in the past 2 nights. But I was here, alone, and that's exactly how they wanted it. The courthouse doors opened, and in walked Derek, right on cue, tan, pressed, and smug as ever. He wore a deep blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent and leaned casually into the woman beside him. His lawyer. I recognized her immediately. Sabrina Dalton. The kind of attorney who called herself a family advocate but specialized in high-dollar custody shifts for upper-middle-class men. She glanced at me, her lips twitching into something between a smirk and a pity smile. Derek didn't even bother pretending. He made eye contact, then looked me up and down as if to say, "This is the best you could manage." I stood when the clerk called my name. As I walked into the courtroom, I felt the weight of silence trail behind me like a shadow. The judge barely glanced up from his monitor. An older man. Silver hair, thick glasses. I looked for kindness in his face and saw none. Just bureaucracy. Derek's side began. Sabrina's voice was smooth, almost comforting, as she laid out their version of events. Derek was a stable provider, she said. He owned his home, maintained a flexible work schedule, had the support of extended family, Martin included, and could offer consistency. Then came the slow dissection of my life. They called my job freelance, as if that meant unemployed. They said I lacked a traditional support network. They hinted delicately, strategically, at my past anxiety medication. Sabrina even quoted a line from one of my texts to Derek from over a year ago when I'd begged him to stop showing up late for pickups. "I can't keep holding this all together by myself." And there it was. Their closing note, proof apparently that I was overwhelmed. I wanted to yell, to scream. But when the judge turned to me and said, "Ms. Caldwell, you may speak," my voice caught in my throat. I looked down at the documents I'd organized, all my preparation, all my late-night research, and in that moment none of it felt like enough. I started, but my voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Your Honor, I'm my daughter. She lives with me. She's always lived with me. I get her up every morning, pack her lunch, take her to school, to piano. I have records, letters from teachers, from our pediatrician. I reached for the folder. My fingers fumbled. A few papers slipped and scattered on the floor. I knelt to pick them up, heat rising in my cheeks. Derek didn't even try to hide his grin. When I stood again, the judge was already typing. "I'd like to request an evaluation," I said quickly. "A custody assessment, home visit, anything, please." He gave a short nod. "I'll review that." Then he turned to Derek's lawyer. "Anything else?" Sabrina gave a thin smile. "We believe the child would thrive in a more structured environment, with a parent who isn't struggling to manage day-to-day obligations." And that was it. The gavel didn't slam. The crowd didn't gasp. But I left that courtroom feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. Derek strutted past without a word. Sabrina gave me a polite nod that felt more like a final shove. And I walked out, alone, into a gray morning that felt colder than the day before. The verdict came 2 weeks later. One line tucked in a thick manila envelope. Temporary custody awarded to petitioner Derek Caldwell. No fanfare. No drama. Just a decision that severed my daily life from my daughter's as neatly as if someone had cut the cord with scissors. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Then I sat down on the couch, still in my work clothes, the envelope in my lap, and forgot how to move. Emma was gone. Not forever, the document said. Sundays. I'd get her on Sundays from 10 to 6, but no overnight stays. No school pickups. No bedtime stories. No weekday breakfast arguments about ponytails or soggy cereal. Just Sundays. The quiet that settled into my apartment wasn't peace. It was absence. It echoed. The next morning, my boss at the boutique called me into the back office. She didn't look me in the eye. "Julia, we've noticed you've been distracted," she said gently. "Missing shifts, coming in late." I opened my mouth to explain, but she shook her head. "I'm so sorry. We have to let you go." Just like that, by noon, I'd lost my job. By 2, I was back home, sitting on the floor, surrounded by case files and sticky notes and coffee cups with dried rims. I called Martin. No answer. I called him again. No answer. The third time, his assistant picked up. "Mr. Caldwell isn't available." I didn't bother leaving a message. He knew what he'd done. That evening, my phone buzzed. A new text from a number I didn't recognize. "I heard, I'm sorry, meet me at the coffee shop." Monica. Monica Torres. We hadn't talked in nearly a year, not since I forgot her birthday and she stopped texting me back. But now she was here. I showed up to our favorite haunt, a hole-in-the-wall coffee bar tucked between a laundromat and a vape shop. It still smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. And there she was, Monica, her lavender hair swept into a messy bun, a laptop open, fingers flying over the keys. "Sit," she said without looking up. "You look like a ghost." "I feel like one." She handed me a hot mug and finally turned toward me. "You're not going to disappear, Jules. They want you to, but you won't." I stared into the steam. "They took her." "They borrowed her," Monica said. "You're going to get her back." I didn't answer. I didn't know how to believe that anymore. After a pause, she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a crumpled paper towel. "I brought you something," she said, unfolding it carefully to reveal a homemade cookie shaped like a broken heart. "It's stupid, but you used to believe in symbols." I laughed once, sharp and short. "You made me a pity cookie." "Yep," she grinned. "Now eat it and then come with me tonight." "To where?" She gave me a sly smile. "To work. I picked up a night shift cleaning contract for a local office building. It's disgusting. It pays garbage, but it'll keep your mind busy." That's how it started. Me and Monica. Vacuuming fluorescent hallways at midnight, scrubbing breakroom microwaves while she pitched me story ideas for her blog, laughing too loud at nothing, crying over too much. It didn't fix anything, but it helped me stand back up. One night we sat on the roof of the building we'd just finished, legs swinging over the edge, the city lights blinking below us. "You lost a battle," Monica said, her voice quiet. "Not the war." And in that moment I didn't believe her, but I wanted to. It happened with a ping. Just one notification. One little red bubble on my phone at 7:14 a.m. while I was scrubbing coffee residue out of my favorite mug. "At the Monicafels tagged you in a post." I blinked, confused. Then I saw the caption. "Ever lost your child not because you were unfit, but because you couldn't out-money or out-manipulate your ex?" My friend Julia's story will break your heart and maybe change your mind about what justice looks like in family court. Custody crisis, single mom warrior, my stomach dropped. It was a blog post, not just a post, an exposé. Monica had written everything, our conversations. Emma's breakdown at the party, the court's verdict, even my confrontation with my father. She'd published my pain. The comments were already pouring in. How is this legal? That judge should be disbarred. This is why women give up, because the system is rigged. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of views. I stood frozen in my kitchen, phone in hand, mouth open. I hadn't agreed to this. I hadn't even known she was writing it. Before I could process my next breath, my phone rang. Derek, I didn't answer. I couldn't. He called again, then again. On the fourth ring, I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, it buzzed. I hit play. His voice was low and furious. What the hell did you do, Julia? Do you have any idea what kind of damage this causes? I could lose my job over this. You just gave up your visitation. You hear me? No more Sundays. Don't test me. My hands trembled. The next call came from an unknown number, then another. I turned off the phone, tossed it on the counter, and sat on the floor. The air was thick with something I couldn't name. Shame, panic, or maybe betrayal layered on top of the betrayal I was still climbing out of. That night, I stormed into Monica's apartment. She was sitting cross-legged on her couch, editing something with headphones on. She looked up and smiled until she saw my face. You posted it, I said. She pulled off her headphones slowly. Julia, you told my story without asking me. You didn't even warn me. Her expression faltered. You told me everything because you wanted people to know what it's like. You said no one listens unless it's loud. Not like this. Not while Emma is still in the middle of it. You didn't think about what this would do to her. To me. Monica stood up, her hands raised. I was trying to help, and look, it's working. People are paying attention, there's traction, there's conversation. Derek is threatening to cut off my visits. She froze. He can't. He can, Monica, because this isn't just a blog to him, it's ammunition. You gave him more leverage. Her eyes filled with something like regret, but it was too late. I needed you as a friend, I said, my voice cracking, not as a content creator. I was both, she whispered. No, I said, you were a journalist. And I was your headline. I turned and walked out, the door clicking softly behind me. Back home, I opened my laptop with shaking fingers and pulled up the blog post. I didn't read the comments. I didn't read the praise or the outrage or the empathy. I scrolled to the bottom and I clicked delete. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to delete this post? Yes. This action cannot be undone. Yes, it vanished. The page went blank. My story had gone viral. And now it was gone. And yet my heart didn't stop racing, because in the quiet that followed, I wasn't sure if I just destroyed my only chance, or if I just dodged a bullet I hadn't seen coming. The days after the blog post disappeared passed like fog. Emma didn't come over that Sunday. Derek needed time to cool off. His words, not mine. I stared at the empty spot on the calendar where I used to write Emma Day with a heart next to it. My apartment stayed dark longer. I didn't bother opening the blinds. What was the point? My war room of files had become a mausoleum. Coffee cups hardened with neglect. Court papers I no longer had the energy to highlight. My hope had dried up with the ink. Monica hadn't called. I hadn't called her either. Too much had been said, or not said. I felt suspended. Not drowning anymore, but not swimming either. Just floating somewhere between grief and grit. And then, one afternoon, it happened. I was checking my spam folder for a lost bill when I saw it. Subject: Custody Case Inquiry. Pro bono review request. My heart stuttered. I clicked. The message was short, direct. Dear Ms. Caldwell, we've come across your case and believe it may merit legal review. Our Legal Advocacy Alliance is currently investigating systemic custody abuses and judicial conflicts of interest. We would like to meet with you for a preliminary consultation. If you're open to this, please reply at your earliest convenience. J. Avery, Legal Investigations Coordinator, Family Integrity Alliance. I read it twice. Then a third time. I had no idea who they were, how they'd found me, if they were real. But I hit reply. Yes, when and where? The meeting was set for the following Thursday. Midtown Manhattan. An office on the 23rd floor of a building so sleek I felt underdressed just walking into the lobby. A receptionist with impeccable posture offered me sparkling water. I declined. I waited. Then the door opened and a woman with tightly coiled hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a file in her hand greeted me. "Julia Caldwell," I stood. "Yes. I'm Jordan Avery, come in." Her office was minimalist but sharp, steel desk, 2 chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city in all its chaotic glory. She gestured for me to sit. I did, smoothing my skirt out of instinct. Jordan didn't waste time. "We've reviewed your court transcript," she began. "We've also reviewed a list of recent custody cases handled by Judge Vance. There's a troubling pattern." My pulse quickened. "A pattern," I echoed. Jordan flipped open the folder. Inside were printed emails, highlighted notes and photos, screenshots of social media connections, dinner invitations, even a blurred invoice. "We've been building a case for months," she said. "Yours is one of 6 custody transfers awarded under questionable reasoning. In each case, the father's legal counsel had either direct or indirect social ties to Judge Vance. Golf outings, private events, fundraisers." I stared, stunned. "Derek's lawyer," Jordan nodded. "Sabrina Dalton is listed as a repeat contributor to a charity chaired by Judge Vance's brother. She's also represented 3 other fathers who received favorable rulings despite contradictory evidence." The room tilted for a moment. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying your custody ruling may not have been based solely on merit, and if we can prove a conflict of interest, we can reopen the case." I wanted to believe it, needed to, but all I could say was, "Why me, why now?" Jordan closed the file. "Because your story was loud enough to reach us, even if it's been taken down. Monica, she must have sent it out before I deleted it, planted a seed I didn't know had sprouted." "I'm in," I said, voice steadying. Jordan offered a tight but warm smile. "Then let's begin." For the first time in weeks, I felt something I barely recognized anymore. A shift, and maybe, just maybe, a shot at justice. You'd think justice comes like thunder, loud, righteous, undeniable. But when it began for me, it came in PDFs, court records, bank statements, email chains, leaked documents printed in tiny fonts with dates I barely remembered. The Family Integrity Alliance didn't come to play. They came with teeth. They started by filing a formal complaint with the Judicial Oversight Board. Then came the press leak. I didn't even know the documents had gone public until I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, unread texts, and a breaking news alert with my name in it. "Custody chaos. Family court judge under fire for possible conflict of interest." They didn't name Derek or me directly, but it didn't matter. The internet filled in the blanks. By noon, reporters were camped outside the courthouse. By 3:00 p.m., my inbox had more media inquiries than spam. The same courthouse that once treated me like background noise was now center stage. And this time, I wasn't walking in alone. I showed up to the new hearing with Jordan Avery and 2 other attorneys in suits that screamed precision. I wore the same green dress from the garden party, the one Emma picked out. Call it superstition, or maybe defiance. Either way, I needed to feel like me again. The courtroom buzzed with tension. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about something bigger, something that smelled like justice. Derek was already inside when I walked in. He didn't look smug this time. In fact, he didn't look at me at all. His lawyer, Sabrina Dalton, stood stiff beside him, flipping through papers with a tremble in her jaw she hadn't had before. The crowd behind us wasn't just observers. It was media, law students, watchdog groups. And for the first time, the system was watching itself. The judge assigned to the review hearing was a woman named Honorable Judge Frazier. Sharp eyes, calm voice, and no tolerance for theatrics. She began with a statement. "This is not a retrial of the initial custody petition. This is an examination of judicial conduct and potential bias that may have impacted the original ruling." I barely breathed as Jordan took the floor. She laid out everything. The donations, the dinners, the sealed settlements. She showed connections I hadn't even realized existed. How Sabrina's firm had handled 2 closings for the Vance family's real estate company. How a scholarship in Judge Vance's name had been funded by a foundation that shared board members with Derek's brokerage. It was like watching a magician unravel a trick you thought was real. Sabrina stammered during her rebuttal. Claimed coincidence. Misinterpretation. There was no improper communication, she insisted. Any social overlap was incidental. But the damage was done. And when Derek finally had to speak, his voice cracked. He called me emotionally reactive. He said I had encouraged online harassment. But his words didn't land like they used to. The room wasn't nodding with him. They were listening to me. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I told them about the party, about Emma's fear. About the hallway I sat in, alone with nothing but my child's whispered panic and a white envelope promising to take her away. I spoke with clarity. Not for pity, but for truth. And when I stepped down, I saw it on Derek's face, on Sabrina's, even on some of the reporters. The tide had turned. And this time, I wasn't the one drowning. I didn't walk into that courtroom. I stepped into the storm I'd been preparing for. My body felt like steel wrapped in silk. Calm on the outside, burning on the inside. Derek was already seated when I arrived, flanked by Sabrina Dalton and a second lawyer I didn't recognize. Reinforcements. That told me everything I needed to know. He expected to lose. Judge Frazier entered. Everyone stood. "Please be seated," she said, and the room exhaled into silence. I glanced over at the press row. Every seat was full. Legal observers, journalists, even a few parents I didn't know. People watching, not just me, but the system. I remembered what Jordan told me before we walked in. "You're not just here for yourself anymore. You're here to remind them the law works both ways." The hearing began with the Alliance presenting its full report. Emails between Sabrina and the Vance family. Undisclosed donations. Prior cases with mirrored outcomes. A web of favors and unspoken debts that cast a long, ugly shadow over my case. Derek's lawyers objected. Claimed there was no concrete evidence of bias. But Judge Frazier interrupted. "Bias doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it hides in the patterns." Then she addressed me. "Ms. Caldwell, do you have anything you'd like to add?" I stood. My knees didn't shake. "I want to thank this court for finally seeing me," I said. "For seeing my daughter and for seeing what's been hiding in plain sight." I turned to Derek. I raised Emma. I held her through stomach bugs, school plays, lost teeth, and broken hearts. I wasn't perfect, but I was present, and that should have meant something. I turned back to the judge. "All I ever asked for was fairness. Today I'm asking for accountability." There was silence. Then the judge nodded. She spoke slowly, deliberately. "This court finds credible evidence of judicial misconduct in the original custody determination. As such, the decision issued by Judge Vance is vacated." My heart stopped. A noise left my throat I didn't recognize. The judge continued. "Effective immediately, full legal and physical custody of the minor, Emma Caldwell, is awarded to the child's mother, Julia Caldwell." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. The quiet was loud enough. I closed my eyes. My body flooded with something I hadn't felt in months, relief that didn't feel like a trick. Across the aisle, Derek sat frozen, like the strings holding him upright had snapped. Sabrina stood quickly and began collecting her files. But the other lawyer, the one I didn't recognize, was already packing up. There was no appeal, no defense. They knew it was over. Judge Frazier wasn't done. In addition, this court refers the conduct of attorney Sabrina Dalton and the Honorable James Vance to the Judicial Conduct Board and the State Bar Association for formal investigation. A soft gasp echoed through the gallery. Sabrina flinched. Her voice wavered as she said, "Your Honor, may I?" "No," Judge Frazier said, her gavel raised. "You may not." And with a sharp crack of wood on wood, the ruling was sealed. Court adjourned. It was done. The system that failed me had finally, painfully turned around. And I hadn't just survived it, I'd made it answer. I turned to Jordan, who nodded, proud but composed. The rest of the Alliance team exchanged subtle, victorious glances. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the hallway because I knew who was waiting on the other side. Emma. The bailiff walked me to the family waiting room. My hands were still shaking as I opened the door. And there she was sitting on the couch, legs swinging, clutching a stuffed penguin we'd won at a fair 3 years ago. She looked up. Her eyes searched my face, scared to hope. I smiled through tears. "We're going home." Emma blinked, then launched herself into my arms. Her little body collided with mine like a promise kept. I held her, rocked her, breathed her in. And just as I pulled back to wipe her cheek, she said softly, "You promised." I nodded. "I always will." Peace doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on your door with balloons or arrive like a clean verdict in a loud courtroom. It creeps in slowly, quiet and steady, until one day you realize the tension in your shoulders is gone. And that's how it happened. 1 week after the ruling, Emma was home. Home, not just for Sunday visits. Not for a few supervised hours where every goodbye felt like a funeral. She was mine again in every real and permanent way. And my apartment, once dim and cluttered with court papers, had come back to life. Sunlight poured through the windows that I'd finally cleaned. The stack of unwashed mugs had vanished, replaced by mismatched bowls of cereal Emma insisted on calling breakfast soup. Her drawings, unicorns, rockets, a sketch of me holding her hand under a rainbow covered the fridge. The silence that used to press on my chest now sounded like possibility. Emma's laughter echoed from her bedroom. I let it fill the apartment like music. On the coffee table lay a small stack of letters, thank you notes. One for Jordan, one for each lawyer in the alliance, one addressed simply to the woman who believed me first, a phrase I wrote for Monica but hadn't yet decided whether to send. She hadn't called, not after the final hearing, not after my reply, but I knew she would. Sure enough, an email pinged into my inbox that morning. From Monica Purple Heart subject, loudest latte ever. I hesitated for a second before opening it. Okay, so I ugly cried reading the ruling. Then I cheered. Then I tried calling but chickened out. I know I broke your trust. I still carry that. But I also still believe your story matters to more people than you know. I miss you. I miss late night mopping. I miss coffee that tasted like anxiety. I miss my friend. Can we talk? I'll bring the noise, you bring forgiveness. I didn't hesitate this time. I typed back, subject, deal you bring the coffee, I'll bring the grace. Let's be messy and real again. My kitchen misses your rants. Also, I never finished cleaning that microwave. She replied within 5 minutes. A heart emoji. Then a meme of a unicorn holding a coffee cup that said Queen of Comebacks. I smiled so hard it hurt. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep beside me during a movie, half buried in popcorn and stuffed animals, I sat on the balcony alone. The October air was crisp, smelling faintly of chimney smoke and something like closure. The city stretched beneath me. Life buzzed on, taxis, rooftops. A rhythm I'd forgotten I loved. I opened my laptop. A blank document stared back at me. I stared right back. Then I typed, title, After the Rain, a memoir. I didn't know if I'd ever publish it. Maybe it was just for me. But I needed to write it, not for revenge, not even for justice, but because silence almost stole my story and I wouldn't let that happen again. Not now, not ever. In the quiet of that balcony, I heard Emma shift inside, her sleepy voice calling, "Mom." I closed the laptop and walked back inside. "Yes, baby." She sat up, eyes half closed. "Did we win?" I knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her face. "We did," I whispered. "We really did." And just like that, I knew what peace sounded like. It sounded like her breath settling. It sounded like my heart finally quieting. It sounded like coming home. 1 year later, the library was full. Not packed, not crowded, but full in the way that matters. Every seat in the small community room was taken, and the quiet was warm, expectant, respectful. I stood behind the podium with a printed journal in my hands. Its cover was simple. Soft gray. The title embossed in silver script, After the Rain. Beneath it, a line in smaller print. Stories from a mother who refused to disappear. I took a breath. Emma sat in the front row, her legs swinging off the chair, wearing the rainbow-striped dress she insisted was her power outfit. Monica was next to her, holding a massive latte and mouthing the words, "You got this," every few seconds like a nervous coach. I adjusted the microphone. "Hi," I began, and my voice cracked a little. I smiled through it. "My name is Julia Caldwell. And for a long time, I thought the most terrifying thing I'd ever face was divorce." A soft chuckle rolled through the crowd. "I was wrong," I continued. "The most terrifying thing wasn't losing a marriage, it was almost losing my daughter to a system I thought would protect her." I flipped the page and began reading an excerpt from my journal. It was from the night after the first court loss. The entry I wrote at 3 a.m., sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty coffee cups and doubts that nearly swallowed me whole. As I read it aloud, something unexpected happened. I saw nods. Women in the audience, one clutching tissues, another gripping a notebook, and a third middle-aged, sharp-jawed, arms crossed, whose face finally softened with a small, imperceptible sigh. They knew this story, not because they'd read it, but because they'd lived it. When I finished the passage, I closed the journal gently and looked out at them. I'm not here tonight as a victim, or a warrior, or even a survivor. I'm here as a woman who made it through something no one should have to face alone, and who decided that silence was no longer an option. Applause followed, not thunderous but meaningful, the kind that vibrates in your bones. During the Q&A, a young mother raised her hand, her voice barely above a whisper. What gave you the courage to fight back when it felt hopeless? I looked at Emma. She did, I said simply. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered her face. I remembered that children don't need perfect parents, they need present ones, and I wasn't about to vanish quietly. After the event, people lined up to speak to me. Some just said thank you. Some shared their own stories, broken pieces still bleeding. Others asked where to find the journal. A few asked how to join the Family Integrity Alliance. One woman slipped me a folded photo, her with her own daughter, both smiling but with tired eyes. On the back, it read, "You made me feel less invisible." That night, as we locked up the library, Monica walked beside me, sipping what must have been her fourth latte of the evening. "You know," she said, nudging me, "you kind of killed it up there." I rolled my eyes. Wasn't aiming to. Exactly why it worked. We stepped into the cold night air, our breaths visible in the glow of the street lamps. Emma skipped ahead, spinning under the leaves like it was still summer. "She's free," Monica whispered. "You both are," I nodded. "It cost everything, but I'd pay it again." We walked in silence for a few steps. Then Monica grinned. "So what's next? TED Talk, memoir tour, coffee-fueled justice podcast?" I laughed. "Maybe, or maybe I just keep showing up at courtrooms, classrooms, coffee shops. Wherever women need a reminder that they aren't crazy or dramatic or broken, they're just unheard." Monica bumped my shoulder. "You're dangerously close to becoming iconic." I shrugged. "I'll settle for loud." At home, I tucked Emma into bed. She looked up at me sleepy-eyed and asked, "Did they like your story?" I kissed her forehead. "I think they saw themselves in it." She smiled. "You're kind of famous now. Only to the people who matter." I turned off the light and sat at the edge of her bed for a while, watching her breathe. Then I whispered to the room, to the darkness, to the girl I once was, "You made it."